Hello there, my friends. I want to say in our devotion for this morning that in every disappointment there will be mercy. This is good news. Disappointment is not your final chapter. Lamentations chapter 3 verse 32 says, "Though he causes grief, yet he will show compassion according to the multitude of his mercies." It's good news, it's great news to know that there will be mercy with every disappointment. We are going to reflect briefly on the story of the children of Israel, found in the book of Numbers, chapter 13 and 14. We are not going to really read the two chapters, but just a brief background. In the book of Numbers, chapter 13, we find the children of Israel having left Egypt. That is after God had done wonderful, mighty miracles, the 10 miracles that he performed whilst they were in Egypt, that convinced the king of Egypt to let them go. They saw the hand of God at work, and God opens the Red Sea, wonderful miracles they have never seen before. When they thought that was the end of them, God does wonders. So now they are on their way going towards the promised land, and something then happens. There is a meeting and a decision is made, and God says to them, send spies to go and look at the land, to survey the land. And Moses elects amongst the 12 tribes, together with the 12 tribes, a representative from each tribe, and the 12 spies go to look and survey the land of Canaan. When they get there, they find that the land is indeed fertile. It's the promised land of milk and honey. And on their return, they bring with some produce of the land, the pomegranates, the figs, the grapes, and other yields from that land to show as evidence to those who are back home. It took them 40 days to go and to come back. And when they are back, they bring a report. Of the 12 spies, 10 of them bring a negative report, and they say to the congregation, we are like grasshoppers compared to the people that we found there. Those people are giants in the land. There is no way that we are going to overcome. And this instilled fear amongst the children of Israel, such that they looked at themselves and said, there is no way that we are going to overcome. But then of the other two members, Joshua and Caleb, when they looked and surveyed the land, they had a belief in themselves that God was still going to do a miracle as he has done in the past. So they say to the people, let's stand up, let's not give up, let's go and possess the land right now. But then the record puts it this way in the book of chapter 14, Numbers, verses 1 to 4. This is after they heard the report. It says, so all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron. And the whole congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? So they say to one another, let us elect a leader and return to Egypt. It's amazing that so quick they are disappointed to an extent that they wept bitterly. They wailed the whole night, they cried, and they are ready to get a new leader who will take them back, because Moses wants them to go where they don't want. When they hear the report of these giants and cities that are fortified and that they stand no chance because of the report of the 10 spies, they feel defeated already. Israel, due to disappointment, they succumb to unbelief, and they disbelieve God who has led them. They disbelieve Moses who has led them. They disbelieve even the 2 spies who brought a good report. Have you ever come to a point, a position that you find you disbelieve and you are disappointed? Could be because of your own wrong decisions that you find yourself in a position of disbelief. regardless of what the cause is. In Lamentations, where we read in the beginning, we are told that there is mercy for every disappointment, regardless whether you're at fault or not. And this is the thread that I am following in today's message. Disappointed as they are, God is also disappointed in some way, because he gets very unhappy about their behavior after he had led them that far by faith, by his grace. And so he is ready to disinherit them as his chosen people. But then Moses, a good leader, stands up in the gap and prays on their behalf and pleads with God that he must not destroy them. Otherwise, how will the Egyptians and the other nations look at this God who brought his people out of bondage only to destroy them in the wilderness? God relented in his anger and forgave them. But there were consequences that were to follow. God was not going to let it just go like that. And let's just follow up on that from verses 29 of the same chapter. It says, God says, "The carcasses of you who have complained against me shall fall in the wilderness. All of you who were numbered according to your entire number, from 20 years old and above, except for Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. You shall by no means enter the land which I saw I would make you dwell in. But your little ones, whom you said would be victims, I will bring in. They shall know the land which you have despised. But as for you, your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and your sons shall be shepherds in the wilderness 40 years, and bear the brunt of your infidelity until your carcasses are consumed in the wilderness, according to the number of the days in which you spied out the land, 40 days. For each day you shall bear your guilt 1 year, namely 40 years, and you shall know my rejection." If you remember, when we read earlier in the book, in the chapter 13, the spies, it took them 40 days to go and come back. So in simple terms, it could have taken them about 20 days to get to Canaan. But then as a punishment, or as a direct consequence of their disbelief, God says, for the days it took you to go, your spies to go and come back, each day shall be a representative of a year. You are going to wander in this wilderness for 40 years. And within those 40 years, you all who disbelieved, you are going to die. But what I'm going to do is a miracle. The very people you were concerned about, your wives, your children, your little ones, any under the age of 20, I am going to preserve as the remnant. They are the ones who are going to enter into the promised land. And over and above them, only Caleb and Joshua, because they believed in me. And the rest is history. If we were to go ahead and look at the story, the end of the story, they eventually landed in the land of Egypt. But all those, rather in the land of Canaan, and those who did not believe did not make it as God had said. Disappointment can lead to unbelief if we are not careful. And this is the message of this morning that I want to share with you, that do not allow disappointment to bring unbelief, because when you have unbelief, you can do many things that you will regret, and there are direct consequences that come with that. Start the same story later on in the book, in chapter 20. You find Moses. They are in another wilderness as they are traveling, still journeying, and Moses is found wanting, in that the children of Israel come to him and say, "Moses, you brought us to die here. This is another instance again, and we don't have water. What are we going to do?" Moses cries out to the Lord. He goes to the temple entrance and he prays, and God hears his prayer. And he tells him, "Moses, take your rod, go and speak to the rock, and the water will gush out." What does Moses do? Moses takes his stick and goes to the rock, and he strikes the rock 2 times. And in his doing so, he is also not being considerate in the manner he calls the children of Israel. And he says to them, "You rebels." That's how he addresses them. God does not ignore the action of Moses. He allows the water to come out. In spite of that, he did not obey him. But then there is a consequence for Moses, in that after what had happened, God said to Moses, "Because you disobeyed me, you are not going to enter into the promised land of Canaan." Eventually we find Moses only goes as far as Mount Pisgah, is given an opportunity to look beyond and see the promised land by the eye, and he does not make it because of disobedience. Disappointed as he was that the children of Israel are constantly murmuring and complaining, he ends up not following the instruction. He regrets because of disappointment. He ended up doing things which had direct consequences. We thank God that there is mercy with every disappointment, because although Moses did not make it to the promised land of Canaan, when he went to the Mount Pisgah, we know that eventually the record tells us that Moses is not on this world. He is in heaven. He is in the heavenly Canaan. He received great mercy in that God still granted him the privilege to see the real promised land of Canaan. So dear friends, as you live your day and you come across disappointments, do not make unwise decisions that you will regret, and they will always come with consequences. If you are going to keep believing, keep trusting God, and keep doing and honoring him, the disappointment won't be the end, but it will be your transportation. It will move you toward the new thing that God has in store for you. So friends, keep believing, keep trusting God, and keep honoring him. Amen.